Okay guys, let's discuss the room, live data and view model. So remember I said yesterday in our class that this is all part of what we call Android Jetpack library, and it's basically architecture component. Now the purpose of the architecture component is basically to be able to provide guidance on an app architecture with the libraries for common tasks, as I said yesterday, like lifecycle management, data persistence. So remember, and I also said that Android architecture component is actually part of the Android Jetpack. So the architecture component helps you structure your app in a way that is robust, testable, and maintainable with less boiler code. So, what are the basic recommended architecture components that we can use? So, you have the UI controller that display your UI. For instance, your activity main, your all these activity and all these. This is your UI controller, and then you have your view model and the live data. So the view model and the live data basically holds all the data that are needed for your UI, and from the UI controller, any notification from any changes that occur are passed through what you call observation. So the next thing that you need is your repository. So your repository, for example, if you look at this, is very simple to implement. It's basically a single source for all your app data. It's a kind of a clean API for your UI to communicate with the data. And then finally you have your DAO, that is your data access object. That is where your SQLite is, your entity, and your room database. So this basically manages local data for SQL data source using what we call object. So we have entity, like I said yesterday, it's an annotated class. It's an annotated class that describes a database table whenever you are working with the room library. So on the device storage, the room persistence library creates and maintains the database for you. And we have, remember I said we have DAO. It's a mapping of SQL query. The DAO is a mapping of SQL query. It's a mapping of SQL query, and basically what the DAO does is that it maps the SQL query to function in order to function when you use a DAO. So you can call the method and the room library takes care of the rest. So the room database basically simplifies the database work and serves as an access point to the underlying SQL database. So repository, as I said, is used to manage multiple data sources, and the view model acts as communication center between the repository and the UI, that is between the data and the UI. So live data is basically a data holder class that can be observed. It always holds the caches of the latest the cache of the latest data and notify the observer when the data has changed. So in this hands-on, we are going to be building a simple, just a simple database, just a simple database. I've called it shopping list. So what we are going to do, the very first thing, I've decided not to write the code in hands-on because it's going to take long if I record it, and the longer the video, then the bigger the video, and it's going to take a lot of time before I can be able to upload it. So in order to create the shopping list demo, what we are going to do is that the very first thing that we are going to do is that we are going to implement our Gradle. So here, when you come here, this is where the Gradle implementation is. So you can implement various versions of the Gradle. Now, so as you can see, this is where I implement the Gradle from here to here. So you can either paste this or copy and paste this. I'm also going to give you the source code. After you implement your Gradle, the very first thing to do is to create your entity. Your entity is your shopping list here. So as you can see, I've also put comment in this, in case you want to read further what each and every of these annotation is doing and what you must do. So I put the comment. When we're creating our entity, here we annotated our class with the entity, and we said the table name will be shopping list table. You can call it any name that you want, but we said the column info is the shopping list, and then all the words that want to be taken are here. We said string. I replicate it as string in all the words that we're going to be taking. So all the words that we are going to be using are then taken into string. Then we create a constructor that we will use to initialize the class here. That is our entity. Then here, what we did here was to just do a getter of the word that we want to do. So the data for the app is the shopping list data, and you will need a simple table to hold those values, which is basically what this is. Now, when you are creating your entity, one thing you need to know is that the architecture component allows you, actually allows you to create one via an entity. So that's basically what we have done in this place. Now, the next thing that we are going to do after, you need to take note of this. The next thing that we are going to do after that is your DAO. Like I said, all the code, I've managed to put comments there so that you understand exactly what is going on. So the next thing that you need to do is to create your DAO. So your DAO is your data access object. What the DAO does is that it validates your SQL at compile time, and associates those SQL method with the SQL with a method. So in our room DAO, which is a shopping list DAO, we were going to use Andy annotation like insert. As you can see, what that does is that the insert represents the most common database operation. So that is to put something in the database. So room uses DAO to clean or to create a clean API for your code. So the DAO must be an interface It must be an interface, as you can see. It must be an interface or abstract class. So by default, all the query must be executed on separate thread, not inside this thread. So now in our DAO, we are going to provide, we are providing about 3 queries. The first query is to get all the shopping list, or all the words that we use for our shopping list, and we want to order them alphabetically. So this is basically what we did. So we said select star from shopping list table. Remember, the shopping list table is what is coming from our shopping list entity. We then say order by shopping list, and we say